I would say I'm pretty healthy.
Dan, you sure that's a good idea? That's your third one.
Yeah, dude, I'm going for a personal best. But my doctor told me I have something called high triglycerides. So I told him, oh, doctor, those things went extinct years ago.
No, Dan, that's a triceratops. Triglycerides are fat in your blood. I think it's probably from all the noodles you're eating.
John, you just ruined my voiceover, dude. Where was I? So I started eating vegetables. So I started walking, and walking, and walking, and walking. And before I knew it, I had lost 15 pounds. But then it got cold and I stopped walking altogether. But there are these things called walking pads. They're smaller versions of treadmills. They are much more portable, they're much more lightweight, you can move them around, and the speeds go super duper low so you can use them under your standing desk while you're working. And that's why today's video is sponsored by FlexiSpot, who sent over their auto-inclined walking pad. But to bring you all behind the scenes a little bit, I'm pretty tired of the unboxing / overview of a product. It's pretty lame, it's a fluff piece, we all know it, it doesn't add any value to you all, so I took a crazy proposition to FlexiSpot and I said, can I bring in 2 other walking pads and compare yours with theirs? Because if you all believe in your product, you should have no problem with that. And to my surprise, they said, okay. I know some of you are gonna be skeptical, so here is literally language from our contract. I copied and pasted this out of our contract to show you all. I'm gonna be comparing the new FlexiSpot auto-inclined walking pad with Wirecutter, who's part of the New York Times, with their top 2 choices of walking pads that they recommend. Wirecutter's #1 pick is the GoPlus 2-in-1 folding treadmill, and their runner-up is the GoYouth 2-in-1 under-desk treadmill. As always, links to everything will be in the description below. Using them costs you nothing, but it helps support this channel, and I really appreciate your support. Pro tip for all of you who want to use a walking pad under a standing desk is that however tall your walking pad is, whichever one you choose, you need to make sure that your standing desk can go that much higher. For example, I'm 5'6", and this desk is now at 44.6 inches tall because the walking pad is 4.6 inches tall. Now, the reason why this is a pro tip, because I know it seems super obvious, it's because most standing desks max out at about 45 to 46 inches tall. So if you're taller, then you may not be able to use a walking pad with your standing desk. So keep that in mind. In third place is the GoPlus 2-in-1 walking pad. This would have been first place, but there's one thing about it that makes it almost unrecommendable. For $280, what do you get from the GoPlus 2-in-1? Quite a lot actually, probably the most of all of them. Not only can it be a standard walking pad, which you can put anywhere, it's pretty portable, but it can also transform into a full-blown mini treadmill. In the compact walking pad form, this thing can go all the way down to 0.6 miles per hour, which is how fast I'm walking right now. It's very uncomfortably slow, but I imagine if you're someone who needs to take it a little easy, this would be a good speed for you. And it can go all the way up to 2.5 miles per hour in 0.1 mile per hour intervals. So to show you what 2.5 miles per hour looks like, this is what that looks like right here. I would say this is kind of on the cusp of power walking. It's a little bit too fast for me to walk this fast while working. I would ideally want it at 2 miles per hour at the fastest when I'm working at my desk. And if I was watching something, a dedicated screen, or listening to something, I'd probably want it a little bit faster at 2.7 to 2.8 miles per hour. The GoPlus can get really fast, up to 7 miles per hour, which is the fastest of all the walking pads on this list. The way that it works is you have to unlock this tab here, you raise this up, and then these arms usually swivel at the end, but because we have limited space, I'm gonna go ahead and swivel it out like this, and then go ahead and drop it forward, and then you're gonna lock it back in place. What's obvious is that in the mini treadmill configuration, this bar is going to get in the way of many standing desks. We measured it, it's about 43 inches high, so if your standing desk is about 43.5 to 44 inches, you're probably good, but anybody shorter than that and it will not work. This screen adds about another 1.5 inches, so it'll be a total of about 45, but it's totally useless and we recommend nobody install it or you remove it if you already did. The reason why it's useless is because this thing doesn't open all that far, so it can really only hold a phone in the landscape position like this, which is pretty useless. But in addition, the angle and the height of it is so weird. I'm 5'6", I'm not that tall, and even for me, when I put the phone in, I have to crank my neck down like this to look at it, which is terrible posture. Again, in the mini treadmill configuration, this thing can get up to 7 miles per hour, which is a very respectable run speed, and you can adjust it in 0.1 mile per hour intervals. In the mini treadmill configuration, you get a really awesome safety feature, which is this emergency stop cord. You can clip it to yourself, it connects magnetically and pulls off really easily, so that if you were to slip and fall off, it disconnects and then the walking pad would immediately shut down. You only get one screen and it rotates between 4 pieces of information. How fast you're going, how long you've been walking for, how far you've gone distance, as well as how many calories you burned estimated. You can use an app to get all that data, but the app actually was very, very poorly reviewed, and so I didn't bother downloading it because most of the comments say this thing doesn't work. The GoPlus is the heaviest and the biggest walking pad of all of them because of that feature to transform into a mini treadmill. All the walking pads have a built-in Bluetooth speaker, but after testing them, I'll just tell you that it's so laughably quiet and so useless that I'm not even gonna bother reviewing that part. Walking and running on the GoPlus is surprisingly pleasant, and it's actually pretty quiet. Yes, the gears make some noise here, but when you walk on the actual track itself, it doesn't make that kind of high-pitched whine even at the higher speeds. We're gonna see that that's not the case for all of these. One thing I did notice was that the width of this walking pad is the smallest of the bunch, and it actually feels noticeably smaller because of its design. So this thing, when I measured it, despite what its spec sheet says, this thing measures 15.75 inches wide. But what makes it feel even more narrow is the way that the track sits compared to the side bolsters. The side bolsters are actually elevated quite a bit compared to the track. And in addition to that, the material that's used there is a flimsy plastic. So every time you step on it, you actually kind of feel like it's really scary. I mean, normally it should be kind of in line with the track so it doesn't feel all that different, but you actually feel it quite a bit. And if you slip or you miss, like I'm freaking out right now, that's actually quite scary. And one big letdown is that you cannot pause this machine ever. So if you want to accurately track your calories or how much time you spent on it, you really can't, because if you hop off of it and you need to turn it off, the thing will totally shut down and all the information will be gone. And if you try turning it back on, it'll just reset everything back at zero. That is not the case with the other two walking pads. To control the GoPlus, you get a remote. You can also control it with an app, but we already discussed why the app is not great. And on the remote, it's very basic. You get power, and you can speed up or speed down, and that's it. The GoPlus walking pad is great in so many ways. You basically get two different configurations. It goes super duper fast, so it's great for walkers and for runners. It's got a pretty good, quiet track here. Everything about it is pretty nice, except for the fact that the warranty on this is so abysmally terrible, I couldn't believe it. I actually had to double take. The warranty on the GoPlus is actually just 3 months. There are return policies that are longer than that. I mean, that is so pitifully bad that if GoPlus can't stand behind their product, neither can I, and that's why this comes easily in third place. Coming in at second place is the FlexiSpot Auto Incline Walking Pad. This is the most expensive of the bunch, coming in at $350, and what sets it apart from all the other walking pads is, like its name implies, the Auto Incline feature. This thing can incline all the way up to 7 degrees, but it's really confusing because you get levels 1 all the way up to level 9, and that means you get anywhere between 2.5 degrees of incline all the way up to 7 degrees of incline, and it's a percentage of 1.43% all the way to 12%. And if you have no idea what I just said, don't worry, because neither do I. I'm literally just reading off of their website. All you need to know is that this thing does get very high inclined, and you really feel the burn from it. In terms of speed, this thing can go from 0.6 miles per hour all the way up to 4 miles per hour in increments of 0.1 miles per hour. To give you all some context, this right now, how fast I'm going is 1 mile per hour. And at a desk, if I were typing on a computer, the most I would feel comfortable with is around 2 miles per hour. And then if I were watching something or listening to something, just kind of walking on my own without doing something, I would feel most comfortable probably going around 2.8 miles per hour. And around 3.8 miles per hour is when I would have to commit to the light jog. On FlexiSpot's walking pad, you're going to get 2 screens. One of them is dedicated to the speed, and the other screen is going to rotate between 4 pieces of information: time elapsed, distance traveled, estimated calories burned, and your incline level. This walking pad is the second heaviest and the second largest of the group, but it does have a handlebar right here, which you can easily lift it up with one hand, and you can move it around with the wheels attached on that end. All of the walking pads have wheels attached so you can move it like this, but only the FlexiSpot has a handlebar that you can raise and move it around with. Like all the other walking pads, this is like my third take, I'm out of breath. Like with all the other walking pads, this thing feels really good to walk and run on. None of them had any issues. I could barely notice the difference between any of them, except for the noise levels. The FlexiSpot is by far the loudest, not the motors. The motors are actually very quiet, especially on the lower speeds, it's almost inaudible. The issue becomes when you get to about 1 mile per hour and you start to walk on the track itself starts to make a high-pitched whine noise every time you make contact with it, and that whine gets worse and worse as you raise the speed. So I'm going to go ahead and raise it to about 2 miles per hour here, which is what I would use at a desk, and I can already tell that this noise, there's this high like kind of noise, and the more incline you put on it, the faster you go, the more you're going to notice that noise. Now, you might say, well, why don't you just put on headphones? It's not a big deal, and that's true. You definitely could do that. The only thing that I would say though is that if you are seriously using this at a standing desk and you have a work meeting, there's a possibility that this noise could be caught in your microphone for all of your coworkers to hear. If you use the incline feature while working at a desk, if you go any higher than level 1, typing on a keyboard starts to feel a little bit awkward because you start to be in a more, inclined position. So let me show you what it's like at level 1 right here. So it's going to raise up. And at level 1, it feels okay. It's when you start getting higher, and of course it gets worse the higher you go. Let me set it to level 5. This now starts to feel like I'm being pulled away from the keyboard and I feel like I have less stability on my fingers. So you could maybe lower the speed a little bit to get a little more stability, but just want to give you guys a warning that it does start to feel a little bit awkward. And also, if you raise the incline on this trackpad, you're going to have to raise your standing desk. Let me go ahead and raise the incline here. And you can see just how much taller I am than I was before. And like I said at the beginning, pro tip, you really need to make sure your standing desk can get that high because most of them max out at about 46 inches. FlexiSpot's track width is actually the widest of all the walking pads. They actually said it's 16.9 inches, but when I measured it, it actually is wider at 17 inches. And this makes it really great for people who either walk duck-footed with their feet kind of flaring outwards, out-toed I think is what it's called, or for people who have large feet. I don't have large feet. You know what they say about people with small feet? They make great walking pad reviewers. The sides next to the track area are going to be much more in line with the track, and they're made with a higher quality material so that if you do miss the track for whatever reason, it's not terrifying like it is on the GoPlus, and it doesn't make this kind of big like crack or snap noise. It just feels like, oh, I missed a little bit, and it's really easy to get back on track. It is, however, the shortest track of all of them, and I personally found that the track length is actually more important than the track girth. We're still talking about track pads, right? Unlike the GoPlus walking pad, on the FlexiSpot, you can pause it. You just hit the power button on your remote. It's going to power down, but it's going to leave all of your numbers there on the screens. And if you want to resume, all you have to do is get back on, push the power button on your remote, and it'll pick up right where it left off. You can use Bluetooth to pair your device with the walking pad to listen to music, but as I said before, all the speakers on all these walking pads are so bad. The FlexiSpot is actually worse because it's quieter, but they're all just, you should never use them. To control the walking pad, you get a remote, and what's nice about this remote is that you actually get a place where it can magnetically clip on right there so you don't lose it. And on the remote itself, you're going to get quite a few buttons. Let's start at this top circle area. In the middle, you're going to get the turn on, and if you push it again, it's going to power off / pause the machine. Then you're going to get a plus and minus button. Those are going to raise or lower the speed. Then you're going to get a P button, which is going to be for programs. There are various auto pre-programmed programs that you can select through. All that is going to be in your manual. And then you have the M button. And the M button allows you to scroll manually through every single display category. And if you push it again, once it gets to the last one, it'll re-scroll automatically through all those stats like it normally does. Down below is going to be a reset button, and this is going to wipe all of the stats off of the screen, and it'll also reset your walking pad down to level 0 incline. And finally, below that, you're going to get the incline button. The way the incline works is that every time you push it, it'll go up a level. And when you reach level 9, if you push it again, it'll reset back down to 0. If you turn the remote around, there's actually going to be a like button, which you should click and get subscribed. The FlexiSpot walking pad has the best warranty of 2 years, which is the best of the bunch. The FlexiSpot Auto Incline Walking Pad is a solid walking pad. It has the widest track of all of them, it's got a great auto incline feature, but the reason why it comes in second place is because the noise levels are just so loud compared to the other 2 walking pads, and also, for me personally, I don't know if I would use the auto incline feature all that much, and I would rather pay a lower price than to have a feature that I wouldn't use. If I'm getting a walking pad, it's because I want something that's low intensity. And one of the joys of walking for me personally is that it's so low intensity that I can decompress, I can think while doing it without having to worry about if I'm going to fall off, without having to strain my muscles. And for that reason, I probably wouldn't use the auto incline feature. You might, but I personally wouldn't. Now you might say the 2-year warranty, which is better than the others, is probably worth that price bump alone, but I'm going to explain in a little bit why it might not be worth it. Finally, coming in first place is the GoYouth 2-in-1 under desk walking pad. At $280, I think this is the ideal walking pad. It is the smallest, it is the lightest of the bunch, and it's got a bunch of features, but nothing super duper fancy. It just does everything really well. The GoYouth walking pad has the highest weight limit of all the walking pads, accommodating up to 300 pounds. One thing that's quirky about this is that it measures speed in kilometers per hour. You can go from 0.5 kilometers per hour all the way up to 6 kilometers per hour, and it changes speed in 0.1 kilometers per hour. Running and walking on this walking pad feels really, really good, like all the other ones, and it's going to be significantly quieter than the Flexi Spot. One feature this walking pad has that the other two do not is a step counter. And I thought the step counter was going to be a little bit flaky, not reliable. I thought it was basically using guesstimations based on how much the track is running, but to my surprise, that is not the case at all. It's using some kind of pressure system, because if I were to go like this, it can actually track all of those steps. There is one quirk though, it does not start working until you get to 0.7 kilometers per hour. So below there, it's just gonna miss your steps, but after that, it actually does a really, really great job, and that's really awesome because I've noticed that if you're at your desk working, a lot of these Apple Watches, rings, all of that stuff, it tracks steps based on movement. So it's using, I believe, a gyroscope. So every time you swing like this, it's guesstimating how many steps you've taken based on body motion. But if your wrists and your arms are static like this, it's not going to count the steps. So that's why this step counter is actually more useful than all the others. I just wish there was a way to get it off of this device and onto some health app. There's no way to do that though. The GoYouth has the most amount of screens of the bunch, coming in with 3 displays. One of them is going to permanently display the speed, while the other 2 are going to rotate between 2 different pieces of information: time elapsed and calories burnt, and on the other screen will be distance and steps. The GoYouth is the lightest walking pad of the bunch, which makes it really nice to carry around. It feels significantly lighter than all the other ones, and even though it's light, it still has the longest track of all the walking pads. That's going to be really, really great, which I'll talk about in just a minute. On paper, this track is supposed to be the narrowest of all the walking pads, but when I measured it myself, it's actually the second widest, coming in at 1 inch thinner than the Flexi Spot. So this thing is going to be 16 inches wide, and it's actually going to be 2 inches longer than the Flexi Spot walking pad. The reason why length is so important is because I found that if I wasn't focused, if I was texting or watching something, a lot of times what happens is my speed gets all messed up, my cadence gets messed up, and I find myself falling further back on the walking pad, and having 2 inches is for me, it was much better than having a wider tracking pad, because I felt like as I got close to it, I would really slip on the end and it would terrify me, and I have to, move back up like this. I found that happening much more than I found myself stepping into the side. Speaking of the side panels are going to be much more level with the track, just like the Flexi Spot. It's built with really robust material, so it's not going to flex and bang and crack and terrify you. It actually feels totally fine. It feels really good. Like the Flexi Spot, you can pause this walking pad. What you do is you pull out the remote, you hit the power button, everything is going to power down, but all of your data and stats are going to remain on the screen, so that if you were to hit the power button again, you'll resume right where you left off. To control the walking pad, you get a remote control, and it's going to have a bunch of buttons on it. Let's first start with the bottom button, the P. When you push this, it's going to set you through different programs, and those programs are going to be found in your manual. The programs basically mean, hey, for 5 minutes, you're going to go slow, then you're going to go a little faster, then a little faster, and that, and so on. The power button is going to turn on and off the walking pad. Again, it's not going to power it off. It's more like a pause button. Then we move up, and we get to the circle area. On the left side is going to be a mute button. If you have your phone paired to it in Bluetooth mode, you can listen to music. Like I said before, the speakers on all of these suck so bad, it's not worth pairing. They're terrible. Then you get a plus and minus button. That's going to control your speed. And then you're going to get this circle button, and that's going to be to reset. If you want to reset all of your stats and parameters, you want someone else to walk on it, you push that, and it's going to wipe all the data. The M button in the middle, this one is going to have 2 different uses. The first one, while your machine is running, remember how I talked about you get 3 screens, and in 2 of those is going to switch between 2 pieces of data. If you push the M button at any point, it'll freeze the data and show only that display. So if you want only the steps to show up, you can push the M when it shows up, and it'll only stay on the steps instead of rotating between the other piece of data. When you push the M button when your walking pad is in standby mode, so basically it's not running, you can scroll through different parameters and set an endpoint for when the machine will power off. For example, you can set it so that you have a set time of 30 minutes, and after 30 minutes, the machine will shut off. You can set it so that after 10,000 steps, it'll shut off. You can set it so that after you go 3 miles, it'll shut off. This is a feature that none of the other walking pads have. The GoYouth walking pad has a 1-year warranty, which is the second best of the group. The GoYouth walking pad is cheaper, it's quieter, it's got a higher weight capacity, and it's got more convenience features compared to the Flexi Spot. Not only do you have the 3 screens, the trackpad is also longer as well, which is really nice. And if you're someone who can live with a slightly narrower track, then I think this is going to be the ideal walking pad for you. Now, some of you might say, well, isn't the 2-year warranty on the FlexiSpot better than the 1 year of the GoYouth? Objectively, yes, but hear me out. I think we need to be honest with ourselves. I know so many people who bought Peloton bikes, and after a couple months of use, they just became very expensive coat racks. What I'm trying to say is that I think for a lot of people, they're gonna use this machine, I'm gonna use this machine for maybe like 3 to 6 months really intensely, and then after that, it's just gonna collect dust. And then for that second year, I'm never gonna use it, which means I'm basically just paying money for a warranty that I'll never take advantage of. I would ideally like to see warranty on these machines be 4 or 5 years, because in year 3, I think is when you're gonna pull it out and go like, oh my God, I let myself go. And that's when you're gonna start using it again. But by that point, both of your warranties have expired and you're screwed either way. Until next time, stay honest.